Good afternoon, I'm Jeff Cook, Taylor County Extension Agent, and this is Backyard Basics. Well, I think spring's finally here. I say that now. It's supposed to be some frost tomorrow morning, and possibly some 30 and 31 degree temperatures come Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. But as you can see from the view, peaches are in full bloom. I hear some bees buzzing around behind me, and right now it's about 70 degrees, so spring's coming. It's trying to get here. Groundhog Beauregard Lee said it was going to be early. I think they have to fire him and get a new groundhog because he didn't do a very good job this year. We've had some really wild fluctuations in our late winter temperatures, with the start of spring actually being tomorrow. But anyway, we're going to touch on a few timely topics. Think about this early spring, late winter. Some things we can be doing in the home orchard, some things we can be doing in the home garden. And we started off here in the peach orchard because the number one thing I see wrong in any kind of fruit production in the home orchard, or just a home fruit tree, is overproducing a crop. You can see there are literally hundreds of blooms on this tree. 500, 600, 700 blooms on this tree. What the grower has done here is, like I said, it's been fluctuating between warm and cold. He's basically, this right here is insurance. It's insurance against a frost, some kind of other kind of weather event, real cold temperatures. These blooms and buds can handle a certain amount of cold. A bud that is not yet open, which we don't have any on this tree now except for up here, these buds that have just swollen, they can handle temperatures down in the low 20s. As you move to this, these first blooms starting to open, the critical temperatures get a little bit higher, so maybe 25, 26. As you get out here, these buds right here, temperatures of 28 degrees for any length of time, 29 degrees for any length of time can actually cause damage. And I'm sure with the weather we've had, if we pull some of these blooms off, we could find a few of these fruit that have not formed. But you can tell, maybe you can tell right here, this fruit right here, I don't know if you can tell or not. That fruit right there, that's your peach inside that flower. And if you pop it open and look at it, it's good and green or clear. You probably can't see it on the screen, but it's good and green and clear, so it is actually a peach, and it will make a peach. All right, so like I said, the commercial growers are going to leave a lot of blooms or a lot of wood, a lot of fruiting wood, this red pinkish wood. They're going to leave this time of year to make sure they have a crop. We have fluctuations. We had a lot of chill hours this year, so our blooms came out, opened up, pretty uniformly. They're all open. You got fluctuations in temperature. You want to make sure that you've got enough flowers on there, enough buds on there to set a crop in case there is some damage from cold events, frost events. So in this situation, with this variety, and all varieties are a little bit different, but this grower has left a bunch of fruit and wood, and what he's going to do, hopefully after Tuesday or after our last full moon here in March, he's going to come out here and assess the crop, pull flowers open, look at what he's got fruit-wise, and then what he'll do in this variety is he'll actually come in here and take some of these limbs off. He'll remove some limbs that are growing back into the tree that will shade other limbs that might be shaded by a limb on top of it. He will do something like that. Another option you have is called bloom thinning or fruit thinning. Fruit thinning would be done a little later when you actually have small fruit. Bloom thinning would be done by basically taking these blooms, and what you would do is maybe say you want a bloom or a good fruit every 6 inches, which is about that wide, or say 2 fists. So you look and you can find strong looking flowers, strong looking blooms. You come in here, remove those. Where you had say 20 blooms on an 18-inch limb, now you got 4. And really, in all honesty, you probably only want 3. On these limbs here, some things to think about is this bloom right here. If it does make a peach, what's it going to be doing when it starts growing? It's going to be rubbing against this stem right here. So you might want to pull that one, leave this, and maybe pull that and leave that. There, you got 3 there. Same kind of thing here on this limb right here. You got 3 blooms on this little tiny 1-inch shoot. Just pull the whole shoot off, throw it down. We're going to move from this orchard to another orchard that I actually did some bloom thinning in, and kind of show you what it looks like start to finish, because I get a lot of talk, a lot of people calling me asking me why the fruit are so small in their home orchard, and it's because you leave so much on the tree. There's only a certain amount of fruit that this tree you know, whatever age and whatever variety this tree can actually support and make a good quality, you know, 2, 2.5, 3.5, sometimes even 4-inch peach. So we're gonna move on down the orchard to some other trees. They bloomed thinned yesterday and day before, and I'll kind of show you what it looks like after they bloomed thinned. Well, I said that I was gonna go find a place that had already been bloomed thin, but I couldn't find anywhere in here that had been really heavily bloomed thin, so I'm gonna bloom thin myself. And me and Jacob were just talking, discussing some things. Since this is Jacob's last show, I figured I'll bring some of his topic up on air. But he mentioned to me once, he called me and asked me a question about turtles in a pond. And all the wildlife experts will tell you that it doesn't matter how many turtles are in your pond because they're not doing any damage. They're not killing all your fish. The birds are probably doing more than the turtles are. You know, if you've ever watched a turtle, they're pretty slow. If they're catching a fish in your pond, it was a slow fish, it was a sick fish, so they're probably doing more good than they are bad. But for whatever reason, not a lot of people don't like to see a lot of turtles in their pond. So there are some turtle traps you can catch. You can build. Pretty easy to build. Trap them. Make yourself some turtle mold if you like that. One thing to consider when you're bloom thinning, or if you bloom thin, is at this stage with these blooms this wide open, the leaf buds have actually started putting out. If you can see in some of these leaves or some of these stems, you know, when you start pulling, you don't want to pull these leaf buds off. It's the same principle with why you wouldn't want to, like in an ornamental in your yard, you wouldn't want to do a lot of heavy pruning once they start putting out leaves, because all that stored energy in that tree, all that energy stored in these buds. So it starts putting out in these leaves and these flowers, and if you go ripping all these off, then you've taken all that energy it stored from last year and you're just throwing it on the ground. So it's got to pull reserves from the roots or other buds, so it's going to just weaken that tree. So just some things to consider when you're, you know, if you do decide to do anything like this. But the main reason I wanted to do this, and I'm definitely not as fast as somebody that would be on a crew at Taylor Orchard or Lane Southern Orchard or Pearson Farm. But if you can start to look on the ground underneath this tree at the number of blooms, and that's just off a few of these smaller limbs. These trees are actually pretty well fertilized. You know, they're taken care of. There's a herbicide strip, so there's not a lot of competition. So they can have a lot more blooms, a lot more flowers, a lot more fruit, and a lot bigger fruit than most home orchards. So the number that I'm leaving on this, probably in a home orchard, you probably would still want to reduce it. But you can see, hopefully you can see on the ground the number of blooms and flowers I'm pulling off of this tree. And you can do this later in the year. Once you have fruit, you can do this same thing. But the longer you leave flowers and small fruit, the less response and the less, you know, effect you're going to have on the fruit size later on down the road. Because every day that these flower buds and these flowers are on here, you know, they use up energy and take away from the other flower buds. And you can see, I don't know if you can tell right there, but when they're in the popcorn stage and they're real small, they're really easy to pull off just by rubbing your hand up and down a limb. And some of these smaller limbs you can just pull right off. But like you said, you would probably pull some of these limbs out anyway to keep shading. But that just gives you an idea of kind of some things you can do on some fruit trees. Give yourself some better quality, bigger peaches, so your peaches aren't the size of a little small pit. All right, well, it's spring. We're done with peaches for now. We're going to hit some other things that are popping up, blooming, growing, some things that might interest you, and see if we can't answer a few of your questions you got. All right, so for those of y'all that didn't see this thing the last couple of years, this is a kudzu bug, imported from Asia in about, I think they said like 2009. Came in, the first place they found it was in Gwinnett. Probably came in on a Toyota vehicle off a boat. Anyway, they're everywhere now. It's a stink bug. If you drive past a kudzu patch in the midsummer, you'll smell them. It smells just like a stink bug, but anyway. If you got a white house, warm days like this and cold nights, you'll probably see them. But they'll be out in trees, basically just trying to warm up, looking for a Looking for a place to live. They like soybeans and green beans and southern peas and any kind of legume. So if you haven't seen them yet, you'll see them this year probably. But anyway, just something we found. We'll head on out, go find something else. All right, I don't know how many of you guys would be interested in knowing this. I know there's probably a few folks out there that have cattle that graze wheat or rye. This is wheat. We're in a big wheat field. This is being grown for grain, so they're not interested in grazing. But you can actually graze this for a certain amount of time prior to the head formation. And the reason you can do that is because in wheat and things like wheat, rye, corn even, the growing point and all the reproductive parts, or the head on wheat, is all right now is down in the soil. It's down here just above where this root formation is. In this wheat plant, you can't tell it from there, but right about an inch above the soil line is what is called the node. It's the first node. This plant will have a few nodes before the growing point will come out. So you could graze it and graze down here. And as long as you don't hit that head where the head starts growing, you're not going to do that too much injury to it. You'll still make a few seed if you wanted to harvest for seed to replant yourself. It's also good to know if you wanted to have, if you had a rye wheat field that you were grazing that you might want to use for other things, seed for other animals, turkeys, or just wanted something to reproduce and make some seed so you'd have some extra food out there. But anyway, just a little tidbit on wheat. We'll probably be a few months off to, for this stuff to be fully mature, mid-May, late May. But anyway, just a little fun fact on wheat. All right, we're out here at the strawberry patch in Reynolds. Thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about strawberries. I know there's a lot of folks that plant strawberries in their gardens. There's a lot of people that plant strawberries in the springtime, and you get a few strawberries on your plant that next year. The majority of what you're going to get is probably going to be the second year off your daughter plants, which are going to be off the runners. But this is basically what most folks do in Georgia, most of our commercial guys, and it's called plasticulture or annual strawberry production. These plants were planted as bare root plants, as plug plants. What you're getting out of plant in your garden, they were planted October, November of last year. So they've overwintered this whole year in these beds. The black plastic that they're on does a lot of different things. It, for one, it keeps the soil a little warmer. That soil, it absorbs the sunlight, keeps that soil under there warmer. It basically puts all the fertilizer and water in that bed, so you can kind of maximize your fertilizer use. You can also minimize the amount of water and maximize your water efficiency, because under this black plastic there's a drip tube or a tape that's got little holes in it, and whenever they turn on the irrigation, it puts out a known amount of water. So they're watering very efficiently. They're not shooting it up in the air, not losing it. But the thing with a strawberry plant is you put a strawberry plant in the ground and it's got a few leaves, and that's a crown. Basically the part of the plant that's at the ground is a crown. What you want ideally what you want in a strawberry plant is you want that plant to grow throughout the winter and form a lot of branch crowns. So you got one main crown and you got branch crowns. All those branch crowns are actually going to have small strawberry flowers already in them, buds in them, and you need temperatures, I believe don't quote me on this, I believe it's below 55 degrees. So anything below 55 degrees during the winter, that plant is actually producing branch crowns. So cold weather is actually good on these plants. Throughout the winter, makes more branch crowns form. And you don't really need a big plant to grow during the winter. The whole time during the winter, you've got branch crowns forming, old leaves dying off, so you usually have a smaller plant. They've just probably within the last week or so started fertilizing these plants. There is some pre-plant fertilizer put down under them, but they've just started fertilizing them through the drip tape. So they're starting to grow, they're starting to, new leaves are starting to emerge. And if you can see down here, probably what you can see, you've got a newly emerged flower, and you actually have some small fruit that have already formed. Another small fruit right here. Just like on the peaches, these flowers and fruit, are susceptible to cold injury. And one thing with strawberries, they are actually, with them growing where they're growing on the ground, when we have temperatures that are forecast, like tomorrow we got temperatures forecast at 37, 36 in this area. Well, that's 37 to 36 right here, air temperature right here. when you talk about air temperature down here on the ground, you can get a lot colder down on the ground. So that's one reason why we can have a temperature of 35, 36, you know, on your thermometer, but you still have frost on the ground. Now, if we get frost on these plants right now, it's not gonna hurt the foliage. It's not gonna hurt these flower buds that are tucked tight down in here under all the foliage. But what it is gonna hurt, the potential for hurting, is these flowers that are open, and any of these small fruit that have formed. So that's why you see these big white sheets behind us. These are just called row covers. There's different thicknesses. And this right here, you know, is good enough protection on light frost days or light cold days, covering plants up. You could use the same thing in your home garden, you know, some sheets and things, cover plants up, protect the blooms, protect the open, you know, the open blooms, protect the fruit that are formed. Because if you damage that young green fruit, then, you know, a couple weeks down the road when it should be ripening, you know, you have nothing. And if you look at long-term forecasts, these small fruit probably within 21 days, 14, 21 days should make a ripe berry. So, you know, you want to protect those so that when you know, we move on into the end of April, 1st of May, we're starting to pick, you know, good quality berries. Another thing to think about with your strawberry plants, and what you see a lot of times, is these first flowers, first fruit are small, kind of misshapen. And the reason for that is, one, the bee activity out in a strawberry patch or even in a garden, wherever, when it's cool, it's going to be reduced. Rainy weather is going to reduce, you know, your bee activity. And these flowers, because of the cold, they take a lot longer to develop. The longer a flower takes to develop, the more trouble it has with pollination, the more issues you have with shape of fruit, size of fruit, and really just overall fruit quality. So that's why usually your first fruit in a strawberry patch are kind of small, kind of gnarled up looking, and then as you go on into the season, those fruit that plant is flowering, making a fruit, the fruit are maturing, and they're going to maturity a lot quicker. You have a lot better quality, a lot larger fruit, and just, you know, overall better strawberry. But I'm gonna cover these back up. We're talking about, like I said, we're talking about 37, 36, maybe 35 tonight, air temperature. So your temperature down there in the strawberry canopy, is what they call it, is going to be a lot colder. So the chance of you having frost on these plants and getting some injury is pretty good. And we don't want to lose those first flowers, first blooms, because those right there, that right there is going to help determine when the strawberry patch opens up, when they can start serving y'all strawberry ice cream, and when you can come out here and pick you a basket. So we're going to find one or two more things to look at. We're going to talk a little bit about some vegetable garden basics. I know everybody, especially a day like this, everybody's itching to go to the garden center and buy a few 6-packs of plants. We're going to sit down somewhere in the shade and talk a little bit about some vegetable garden basics, and I'm going to tell you about upcoming events in the area. All right, well, we're winding up our, I guess, April show here. I thought since it's warming up and I know everybody's itching to get in the garden, I'd touch on a few little garden basics. And also I wanted to put a plug in before I forget. Hopefully I'll be able to remember again. But we're going to be doing some beginners vegetable gardening classes. We'll be doing 3 of them in the areas. I'm going to be doing one on the 29th of March from 10 in the morning till about 12, about lunchtime, at the Peach County Farm Bureau office that's right off of 49 in Fort Valley. Then on the 12th of April, I'm going to do a beginner's vegetable garden class in Butler at the Government Annex building. And that's going to be from 2 to 4 following our 4-H rabies clinic, which is also on April 12th. So if you're in Taylor County and you need a dog or cat vaccinated, shots this year are going to be $10, but we'll be doing rabies shots in Butler and then in Reynolds starting in the morning and finish up a little after lunch. And then on the 19th, which is the following weekend, we're going to do our last beginner's vegetable gardening class. It's going to be in Roberta, Georgia. Most likely it's going to be at the Crawford County Middle School in the ag classroom. You can call each county's extension office. You can look us up on 1-800-EXTENSION. You can get your county extension office number and sign up for the class. There's no cost for the class right now. But we're, like I said, we're going to do beginner's vegetable gardening. So if you grow things and you grow them well, it's probably not for you. But if you like my wife, she says she has a brown thumb. If you have a brown thumb and you want to learn a little bit about growing vegetables and get a few pieces of literature that might help you out in your gardening,
definitely check these things out, and they ought to be pretty good, pretty informative, pretty good information for you. All right, so some basic on vegetable gardening. It's April now, so you should have already taken a soil sample. If you didn't take a soil sample, it's still not too late to take one, but what you do to your garden may not help you out for this year, especially if you need lime. If you need lime, if you've never limed your garden, or you don't know if you need lime, it's going to be too late to do any liming, to do any good for your garden this year, but it's never too late to lime. If your pH is low, you need to raise it up, so it doesn't matter. If you have things in the ground, or if you're about to plant things, you're better off to put lime out now, even if it's not going to affect this year's crop. But go ahead and get your soil sample, and then you can come in and we can give you fertilizer recommendations based on what crops you want to plant. We also have some good stuff on, and one of the most important things I can tell you in a garden, and I learned this firsthand, is your plant population, your plant spacing, your in-row and between-row spacing. It's the same concept with when we're out in our yard or in our garden. When we see a weed pop up in the row, what do? We pull it up. Why do we pull that weed up? We pull it up because it competes with the crop we planted. So when you overplant crops in your garden, when you plant too thick, you plant things too close in the row, or your rows are too close together, you basically just planted competition for your garden plants. So we have some good information that gives you basically the number of plants you need per 100 feet a row, the number of seeds you need per 100 feet a row, your in-row spacing and your between-row spacing. You need to leave, for most of us, that don't want to use a lot of herbicides, you need to leave enough room between your rows that you can do some cultivation. Whether you do cultivation with a small tiller, or you're using a small hoe or rake, you need to leave room between your rows for some kind of cultivation. In a garden situation, 20-something to 30-something inches between rows is good. If you've got tractor equipment, then you need to plan for your tractor, which obviously you probably have. But that between row spacing is going to help you out, and then your in-row spacing. Each plant that you plant, each seed that you plant has a capability to do a certain amount, to yield a certain amount of, whether it's green beans, squash, tomatoes, and as you plant more plants in that area, each plant that you've planted, the potential it has is reduced. So really, all you're doing is you're wasting money, you're wasting seed by putting more seed in that space. One squash plant per 2 feet can do a world of squash production. If you plant them real close together, you might get the same number of squash, but you've planted, you got more plants out there, you got tighter space, and you have more issues with diseases, you have more issues with insects, and if you do any spraying for insects or for diseases, you have a lot more trouble getting that to the target pests, getting it down inside those leaves. So plant spacing and in-row spacing is probably one of the biggest things I see in gardens that we don't do right, or we don't pay attention too much. The other thing would be fertilization, and like I said, very good vegetable gardening in Georgia and home gardening publications that we have available that actually have recommendations, and they break it down. If you get a recommendation of a certain amount of pounds per acre, we have charts in here that break it down to pounds per 100 feet of row, so you can easily break it down to units that you can use in your garden, whether your garden is an acre or whether your garden is a couple 25-foot rows. We can break it down and get you fertilizing correctly, so that one, you're giving that plant enough energy, enough nutrients to produce a crop that you would like, and two, you're not overdoing it, so you're putting too much out there and actually causing issues or problems with the fruit and vegetables that you're producing. Not to mention, fertilizer's not cheap, so every little bit extra you put out there that you don't need, it's just hurting your pocket. And when people say, some people say they think that growing vegetables in the garden costs a lot more than what you pay for in the store, and a lot of times if you overdo it and don't pay attention to recommendations, they definitely can. Easy to get into the pocketbook when you start paying a lot for fertilizer and putting way too much out. That's just a few things to think about with your garden. There's all sorts of things to really think about, and hopefully we'll touch on those at our beginner's garden classes. I'm always available, at one of our offices. I may not be at the office to talk with you right then, but I'll always try and get back to you, if you do have specific questions. But last but not least, the last thing I'm gonna say, and one thing I've started doing, it's been 3 years now, I'm on my third year, is keep records in your garden. keep records of what you planted on certain rows, where you planted them, when you planted them. Keep records of how they did, what varieties you planted. This can help keep you from making the same mistake twice. And it can also help you if you find something that really works for you, a variety that you may never heard of, that somebody told you to try, and you plant it out there and it works for you. It gives you some ideas of what to plant next year and how to plan. So keep a good record. It also helps you to rotate when rotating crops, because we all know that diseases and nematodes and things like that get worse if you don't rotate. So keeping a good garden record will help you. It'll end up in the end saving you money, saving you time. And it's just a really good way to keep track of what you're doing. Make sure you're not wasting money, or make sure you're not wasting time and effort, because everybody knows that a vegetable garden is not. It's not. You're not just gonna throw seed out there and go out and pick everything you want to pick every day without a little bit of work. So you want to make sure that work you put in ends up you reap some benefits there at the end. So hopefully this little segment has helped you out a little bit. And like I said, call the county extension office here in Taylor County, Peach County, or Crawford County to find out more about our beginner's vegetable gardening class. Hopefully we can kind of run some ads in the local papers and have some stuff on, Flint River Communications, Channel 14. But give us a call, sign up for it. We got limited space in all locations. We should have plenty of room for everybody, but we do have a maximum we can take. So call us up, and like I said, call me if y'all have any gardening or any kind of ag related questions. And hope this has been helpful. I guess that's it for this month on Backyard Basics. I'd like to thank Jacob for being my cameraman. This is his last show. I don't know if Bev's gonna give me the camera next month by myself. Hopefully we'll have somebody to take his place, and we can muddle through a good May show. I might make him jealous and take the new camera person fishing, because he keeps talking about wanting to go do a fishing show. So I'd like to thank Jacob for all his hard work, trying to make me look a little bit better than I really actually do out here on the camera. And I guess we'll see y'all next month on Backyard Basics, where we're filmed in your backyard.